In this edition of Fifth Gear, Citroen's C3. A Dodge Viper takes on a Nissan Sunny. And how easy to drive is BMW's new 7 Series.
The arrival of any new car always creates a stir. But when it's the first new car for 10 years from the most evocative name in motoring, Lamborghini, the anticipation is apocalyptic. A new breed of raging bull that must follow the devil itself, the Diablo. In order to pay for their very survival, Lamborghini have now sold their soul to Audi. And the question is, can they continue the blood rush of the past with the Murcielago? Visually, it inherits much of the Diablo's lines, but they've been tidied up. Its narrow waistline has been filled in, the rebellious look tamed down a little. No monstrous rear wings anymore. While the Diablo was styled by Marcello Gandini, the Murcielago has been penned by a Belgian. It's still a stunning machine, but it's not so much of a teenage tearaway. It's grown up on the outside, and the same can be said for the inside. You still enter via the evocative scissor doors, but you're no longer greeted by a schoolboy's bedroom filled with bits of carbon fibre and clumsy plastic switchgear. Instead, you're surrounded by discreet two-tone leather. The Audi influence is obvious. But any worries that the Lambo's got any quieter are silenced by a twist of the key. V12 Harmony is just the sweetest sound an engine can make. Not bad for a company that started out building tractors. Unfortunately, if you want to make a rapid getaway, you're more likely to be greeted by the stench of slipping clutch than the aroma of burning rubber. Because since the early Diablos, four-wheel drive has been a Lamborghini trait. And now they've got an added insult to injury by installing traction control. Both were introduced because Lamborghini felt some of their customers needed a bit of security. But I'm sorry, this is not a Honda Civic, it's an Italian supercar. And if it scares you, you should go and buy something else. This may be the first Lamborghini to have a 6-speed gearbox, but you only ever need 2 of them because the 7,800 RPM red line is good enough for nearly 90 miles an hour in second. I have to admit that in everyday use, you wouldn't really know it was four-wheel drive. In a straight line or on the exit of some corners, the variable system will put 95% of the torque to the rear wheels, but it still only does it when it wants to, even with the traction control switched off. Too much power too soon will push the front of the car wide, so you need to be patient with the throttle before flooring it and letting the Murcielago dance. The famous V12 engine now sits some 2 inches lower in the chassis to help with the handling, and it's been stretched from 6 to 6.2 litres, raising the power to 570 bhp. The Murcielago will take you to 60 in just 4 seconds and on to 205 miles an hour should you so wish. And it will also relieve you of £158,000 for the pleasure of doing it. Glorious though it is, the Murcielago has lost some of the raw passion of its parents. There's not even a rear-wheel drive option anymore. It's joined the ranks of supercars suitable for everyday use, which is what Lambo intended all along. But in so doing, it's lost a little of what I loved about Lamborghinis. They used to be outrageous. Now they're almost respectable. The Murcielago sets my pulse racing as soon as I see it, but perhaps I must now look elsewhere for my ultimate supercar. Like just down the road to Modena, where they make this mouth-watering 7.3-litre 580 horsepower Pagani Zonda. and you can find out if it fulfills my dreams when I test it later in the series.
What I'm about to tell you isn't going to make me very popular. Car dealers will be sticking pins in wax effigies of Wilson, and private sellers up and down the country will be throwing their furniture at the television. What I'm about to tell you contradicts everything you'll read from so-called experts in glossy car mags. But what the hell? It's the truth, and you need to know. Classic cars aren't selling. The market's gone soft. Why? Well, there's September the 11th, tumbling new and used car prices, and a growing realization that a lot of these old crocs are simply overpriced. Now here's the thing. At the moment, the old car game is the one corner of the used car market that offers the canny buyer, people like you and me, the most outrageous and ridiculous value for money. Let me explain. Take this Jaguar S-Type. Nice level 67 example. Chrome wire wheels and a desirable 3.8 engine and overdrive combo. Mileage 57,000 with sheafs of history plus recent bills for a specialist overhaul of 10 grand. So what's that worth? 10? 8? 5? Wrong. This very car was sold just 2 months ago at auction for £3,800. I'll say that again, £3,800. Yet just 2 months ago, this very car was advertised for £10,750. Time to meet an owner who's become a monster auction fan.
It was my lucky day. I got there at 1:45. I saw the car at 1:55, and I bought it by 1:15, and I'll tell my employers I was back at work by 2.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a good day. And it drove well.
Because there's always that heart-stopping moment, isn't there, when you drive it home and you just see the oil pressure gauge just go down like that.
I didn't want to see that, and it didn't happen, so I was very relieved, but very, very happy that I bought something that was fantastic value for money.
There will be people out there who are saying, no, I would never, ever go to an auction. It's too terrifying, too much risk. What do you say to that?
Auctions aren't for the faint-hearted, whether it's new cars or classic cars like this. But if you've got the courage of your convictions and you've done your preparation, there's money to be made and there's rewards to be reaped from it, I would say.
You think you might even take a bit of profit out of it when you come to sell it?
You never know, do you, Quentin? You never know.
No, John, you don't. Which is why I would have loved to have been at the auction when this agonisingly beautiful Maserati Ghibli went under the hammer. I used to have one of these. It was a big hit with the ladies. And the reason why this car is such an outrageous, unbelievable bargain is that it comes with bills for £50,000, yet it cost its very shrewd new owner at auction £16,300. It is unbelievable. This car is emphatically not a pig in a poke. It drives beautifully, plenty of urge, listen to that. Interior is beautiful. It's just waiting to be pointed at Geneva and pull the trigger. Why am I frittering my life away making television programs when I could be out buying Maseratis? I mean, it's just joy. This was the actual Earl's Court Motor Show car in 1967. Plus, it's had a titled owner, so it's got provenance, just the way I like them. Last year, it was on a forecourt for £32,500. Didn't sell. Earlier this year, it was up for £29,000. Didn't sell. So the owner cut his losses and packed it off to auction, where it fetched just over 16,000 quid. Time for our final auction bargain. Charming, usable, economical, and so terribly, terribly English, a nice minor rag top like this would make maybe £3,000 at a dealer. It's a 1959, last owner 26 years, lots of history, and a genuine 67,000 miles from new. According to the MOT, it's only done 100 miles in the last year. So what would you give for this disarming reminder of the way we were? How does 1,800 quid sound? Well, that's what one very shrewd lady paid for this 2 months ago at auction. Sadly, she can't be with us today because she's visiting a relative in Bournemouth. Where else? But she's very kindly written us a little note to tell us exactly what she thinks of her new purchase. Dear Mr. Wilson, I do hope you've fallen in love with Mildred as much as I have. She runs beautifully, always starts first time and looks half her age. Do look after her, she's very special to me. P.S. Bournemouth is lovely. Yours very sincerely, Mrs. M. Evans.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please state your name for the record.
Daniel Fennell.
Thank you. Mr. Fennell, you're a serial modifier with a string of souped-up motors to your name. The purpose of this hearing is to determine exactly what would happen if you were let loose with an innocent car and a pot full of cash. Could you be trusted?
Frankly, he couldn't, and there's the evidence. A Nissan Sunny.
I've always had a love for Renault 5s and hot hatches, and the Sunny GTIR Nissan Pulsar, it's just a natural progression for me.
It's amazing the difference 25 grand makes.
How much?
The car owes me £25,000. That includes buying the car for £9,000. The seats and the interior modifications, including the electronic boost gauge and the electronic fuel controller, they probably cost around £1,500. Now, I've spent between £13,000 and £15,000 on the engine itself. That includes the turbo, which was £2,000. Pistons, the uprated forged pistons, they were about £1,000. Head gasket was £200 uprated. The exhaust system was £200. Dump valve was £200. Basically, this is endless.
Now, that money that you've spent on it, do you think you will ever get it back?
No, unfortunately, when modifying cars, you never get your money back, but it's the feeling and the thought that you've done it yourself. It's not someone else's car. Yeah, you will lose money on it, but to me, it's priceless.
The GTIR in standard trim comes with 220 bhp, already enough to make Clio 172s and Civic Type Rs feel as though they're tied to a tree. But a bit of judicial winding on with the turbo boost puts 280 bhp in reach. If you're not happy with that, some extra fine-tuning will see 300. But Danny's got 400.
It's awesome. It blows the socks off of most Porsches, Ferraris, and most things on the road, really. Its handles very good, it picks up through the gears, tremendous, and its top-end power is superb.
Wouldn't it be interesting to put Danny's Nissan on a dyno to see exactly how much power it produced? Yes, it would. But wouldn't it be more interesting to race it against this?
A real mean mother of a car, the 8-litre V10 Chrysler Viper. Like the saying goes, there ain't no replacement for displacement. 60 takes just 4.5 seconds, and it will be driven
By me. Game's up, Danny.
Me, beaten by Nissan Sunny. Please don't tell anyone.
Best of 3, Danny, obviously.
French cars used to be a little bit bonkers, and Citroens in particular were Captain Crackers. Then somewhere along the line, somebody gave them a frontal lobotomy, and what followed made physics look interesting. With the stodgy Zara and the loony, but not in a good way, C5, Citroën seem to have lost it altogether. But now they've shrugged off their straitjacket, put pencils up their nose, stuck pants on their heads, and come back with a brand new Super Mini, the C3. Unlike its boxy rivals, the VW Polo and Ford Fiesta, the C3 is a much-needed breath of fresh air into the Super Mini sector. A squat stance and cheeky chubby face make it a sort of modern-day Camp Toy Town runabout. If the rumours about Noddy and Big Ears are true, this is what they'd be tooling and probably fooling around in. If Noddy were to take it for a test drive, though, he'd notice straight away that there's plenty of space for his trademark pointy hat, and his close friend wouldn't be bashing ears with everyone. But if there were any hat issues, they could go for the full-length sunroof option, just like you can get on the Picasso. But quite where those two work-shy layabouts would find the extra 500 quid it costs, it's beyond me. The C3 offers so much more than just space. There's these awesome armrests, storage drawers under the seats, a classic Citroen double glove box, sweet air vents, funky dials, and a removable ashtray. You can place it here, here, or even here, just in case the kids might want a crafty fag in the back. All of which goes to show that Citroen have put a lot of effort into the C3. Unfortunately, it was all knocked together by a close showbiz pal of Noddy, Mickey Mouse, and he wasn't having a good day. I'm not sure that's supposed to do that. Oh, nice one, another stowage area. That won't go back. Oh God, look at it. And look at the rigidity of that, just flimsy rubbish. I've broken it. Better put that back where it goes. Now, instead of concentrating on two glove boxes, why don't they just make one decent one? Look at that, flimsy as anything, junk. And that's not really going to stay on there forever, is it? Look at that coming away.
Citroen, however, promise faithfully that these build quality problems will be sorted. Mind you, the rather slack two-tone paint job under the bonnet looks set to stay.
Now, Citroen reckon this is the world's cleverest boot. What we have here is the Modular board. Well, this device is meant to keep your muddy boots separate from your shopping. As you can see, it's an absolute pig to work out and totally flimsy. If I want a challenge, I'll buy a Rubik's Cube. Enough said, I think.
Traditionally, Citroen small cars had such lively handling that they often tempted inexperienced drivers beyond their limits.
But those same drivers won't be mucking about in the C3, which is based on an entirely new platform. Citroen are very happy to call this a shopping car, and thanks to the electronic speed-sensitive steering, which has very dopey reactions, you'll probably feel the same way.
Only the very brave would try to discover just how fast a C3 can go around corners. But who wants to go sideways to the supermarket?
Instead, sit back, relax in the mini MPV driving position, appreciate the slick gear change and keen brakes, and soak up the comfy ride. No thrills or spills, just wholesome family fun. This is the happiest shopper in town.
Initially, there'll be a choice of a 1.4 or 1.6 litre petrol and a 1.4 litre diesel, with a more powerful diesel coming in the summer. Prices kick off at $8,995 and top out at $11,995 for the 1.6 exclusive, which comes with 4 airbags, climate control, CD player, alloys and ABS.
You won't find a prettier Super Mini for anywhere near the £9 asking price. Plus, it's got the drive and practicalities to match. But that's still a stack of cash to pay for a car with a flat pack interior. Until they sort the build quality problems out, the maddest thing about Citroen is who allowed this fun little car not to be a complete winner.
Oh dear, Toyota, who are ever so sensible, have gone potty. They say the future's called Pod, a best friend that changes colour. When you get in, it cheers up. When someone cuts you up, it gets cross. And when it's low on fuel, it gets sad. It even wags its tail. And don't think in the future we'll use boring old steering wheels. Instead, you drive it with one hand using this thing. It accelerates, brakes and turns. Perfect for the joystick generation, rubbish for everyone else. The Pod also appears to come with a lavatory. Sticking 2 fingers up will also be a thing of the past.
Would you please let me pass? Thank you very much.
Weirdest of all, though, is the way the Pod will look after you. It'll sense you getting stressed and even congratulate you on good pieces of driving. Whatever next?
New 7 Series was the cry in the office as the first pictures of the new Uber saloon from BMW were gathered from the internet. We clutched ourselves in anticipation, preparing maybe a small round of applause. And then we saw this. Ah! It's just hit British shores in full-on right-hand drive form and is going up against established contenders from the likes of Merc, Audi and Lexus. If it's going to compete in this mid-50 grand sector, then it's going to have to be very impressive indeed. Now, I'm not saying it's ugly. No, actually, I am saying it's ugly. But the bloke that designed it, Chris Bangle, says that it communicates dynamism, performance and on-the-road presence. No, Chris, it doesn't. It communicates fatness, weirdness, and what the hell is thatness? You see, there's a problem with this bit of the boot here. It might contribute to great aerodynamic efficiency, but it looks like it was built by Gibbons with access to welding equipment. It doesn't quite fit with the whole line of the car. And when you get to the front, it kind of looks like a BMW compact that's been melted over a hot stove. We'll probably all love it, but in about 10 years. Just look at this interior. It reminds me of a yacht, which is great because it's new and fresh and exciting. You see, underneath it all, Ugly has hidden talents. Loads of them, and they're everywhere. And it's with all these gadgets tucked away where you start to appreciate the sheer sophistication of the 7. It's got a push-button start, you get a free 80s phone, and there's not even a conventional gear stick. Even the doors and boot are electric, and you're never going to get bored of that. Lurking under the bonnet of this 56 grand 745i is a 4.5 litre V8 kicking out 333 brake horsepower and absolute shed loads of torque. It comes courtesy of extremely trick double Vanos valve timing and Valvetronic engine management, which basically means it's just smoother and more powerful than the old 740. You get a 6-speed auto, but should you so choose, you can change gear via these sequential buttons mounted on the steering wheel. It's a surprisingly sporty drive, with linear steering and bags of grip. And despite its portly dimensions, it still manages to hit 60 in just 6.3 seconds. Helping you out is stability and traction control, along with lots of mechatronic action, a new word for mechanical systems operated by electronics. In fact, most things on the 7 are controlled by supercomputers. And most of those electronics are controlled by this. Now, BMW calls this the iDrive. But you can think about it like the mouse on your home computer. You turn into a menu, point and click, and the car sorts things out. Now, it's actually really easy to use, and if you can't figure it out in about half an hour, you ought to seriously think about a bib at mealtimes and Velcro shoes. But there is a problem with the iDrive in that it doesn't lock out functions on the move, and you find yourself looking at the road, looking at the iDrive, looking at the road, looking at the iDrive, just before you and it... Ah! You get the idea. Although you probably shouldn't have a licence if you find all that difficult to work out. But if you do, you'll be pleased to know that the system is moving towards complete voice activation in the future. I love the old 7 Series so much that I nearly had a minor coronary when I saw what the new one looked like. But, and this is a really big but, it drives like the absolute daddy. And it genuinely pushes things forward. It's a bit like a really pretty girl with her 2 front teeth missing. You still would, but you'll always know it's just shy of perfect.